everybody. Welcome back to the Black Room Secrets. Took a couple of weeks off, so catching up. Today I'm excited to have Jimmy join us from Future Runes, which is his own channel that I highly recommend checking out if you find any of the stuff we talk about today interesting, which I certainly would. Hi, Jimmy.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Looking forward to
absolutely.
this for a while.
Um, So, and I met you through basically Jeff's channel of Metal Madness 66. So it's kind of this whole metal streaming community. So why don't we start with how did you decide to start your channel and what was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, I think it was the Porcupine Tree deep dive was the first time I got to meet you, which was really great, and it was really cool. Like, Jeff reaching out and uh, you know just introducing me to you and like some of the other guys, and kind of just getting to collaborate on that was really a fun experience. So that was really cool. Yeah, my channel. Well, I guess I've been doing it for about 2 years now, and it was kind of just started on a whim. Like I was just watching a lot of other sort of metal YouTubers out there, uh, specifically ones that are showing off like collections, vinyl CDs and things like that. And I found that a really like just a cool way to learn about new music. I'm definitely the type of music uh, listener that I'm always seeking for new things and trying to find things that are out there that are maybe not as well known. And I found, just watching some of these guys, I really learned about a lot of new things, and that was really cool. Um, and I like to collect vinyl and CDs and tapes, and you can see my little vinyl setup over there. What's up, Jeff? Um, and it's just fun. Like if you're into like vinyl, it's fun to watch people show off their stuff and you're like, oh, I want that. It's kind of like a coveting thing, if you will. But yeah, I had been doing that for a few years and like watching guys like Brain Smasher and Marty, guys like that. And I didn't really think about doing like a sort of like music channel myself because I'm not really that good at talking about music. Like I guess I'm good like if I'm in like with other people, but like if I'm on the spot on video, I found quickly that there are guys that are way better at it than I am. And but
Yeah.
anyway, like
Just real quick, yeah. I mean, I think I feel exactly the same way, right? When Jeff kind of first planted the idea of me doing I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can do just talk about music, especially by myself. I'm okay with kind of contributing in a group chat with you guys, but yeah, I think some people are I think are just better at speaking speaking about music more more nuance, more interest. Jeff does it pretty well. I don't think I could keep people's attention doing that, so that's why I decided to do this instead.
yeah. Yeah, I think we're kind of alike in that way that it's easier, at least it is for me. I think it is for you too, to just kind of be able to just talk like we're in a conversation, and then I feel a little more comfortable about maybe trying to say something profound about a piece of music, or rather than just sit there and show a vinyl and be like, "Oh, I love this. This is great," and then I'm like, "Hmm." Then I kind of freeze up and not sure. But that was kind of like the idea. I I submitted a video to Brain Smashers. He had sort of a contest going to reaching out to people, just make a video, and he liked it, and he shot me a bunch of likes, and I've kind of been talking to him for a while. He's been really cool for me, and uh, so I kind of slowly got my channel starting, just like showing off some stuff, and that's when I quickly realized that I'm not too really good at doing this sort of collection update style thing, and I had been wanting to do like hiking style videos for a while. And it just kind of naturally happened, even though I'm still kind of just figuring it out still and trying to learn what I'm really trying to say with it, I guess. So I just slowly started doing these videos with my cell phone. I mean, not having any kind of really good equipment or anything. I mean, just I think the first cell phone I started, if you go back to that first hiking video, it's like a S10, I think. So it's not even,
Sure.
it's like 720p. I mean, it's pretty, it's pretty lo-fi in terms of video, but um,
But you know what? I always say the best camera you have is the one on you. Um, you know, so it's not as much about it, especially now when most people consume content through their mobile devices, where you can't you can't quite notice the difference, in resolution or some of your attributes that higher end equipment gives you. So I think you can get away with a lot of things.
yeah, for sure. Especially if you're just kind of like starting off and just kind of messing around. And I kind of quickly learned like I could probably do some cool stuff. I mean, I learned I took photography classes and in college, and I actually went to school. I started working in broadcast production. I worked for a news channel before I segued into my other career that I work now, but because I found that it wasn't really for me. But I did learn some stuff, like editing video and
Mhm.
things like that, and shooting with a DSLR. And uh, I didn't really go too far with it, but I figured out quickly. I was like for me, like I kind of go back to the Les Stroud sort of mindset. Les Stroud is the survivor man, and he was sort of like the pioneer when it comes to like that sort of vlogging kind of style of like when you watch his videos, it's like he's taking you along with him. It's like you're there for the ride, and I always really liked that aspect of his stuff. Now, granted, he's doing something way crazier than I am. I'm not out there, like surviving for my life. I mean, he would go out there for 5 to 7 days at a time and not even bring any food or water or anything, and just survive off the land. And I just thought, I mean, that was, again, he was the first guy, maybe not to survive, but just do that style of video. And I always really enjoyed watching that and feeling like I was there with him and experiencing the whole thing with him. And now today with our, you know, all these YouTube channels, and if you go look it up, I mean, there's a lot of guys doing this sort of thing. I'm not doing really anything new, but that was kind of my whole idea behind like the hiking videos, was like I wanted to try to like take you along with me and feel like you were there along with me, to get to know me personally and maybe inject a little bit of my personality into the whole thing. And then maybe like introduce a bit of the music in there as well, because I feel like some of the music that I listen to really fits in with my whole enjoyment of being outdoors and in the wilderness, and experiencing um, that sort of you know environments, and it kind of bridges the gap for me. And in a way, I kind of wanted to just sort of like share that experience, if that makes sense. you
Oh,
know
for sure. And I think for a lot of people don't necessarily have the opportunity to be out there, maybe as frequently or as easily, or in a place as beautiful as as Colorado, um, or some of the other places where you might see people doing that. So and I think it could be just kind of psychologically calming experience watching that when you can't do it yourself.
Well, and that was another thing about it is that, I mean, I'm a big wilderness advocate, and my hope is that what I try to do is like what the people that I enjoy do is to relay that experience, as well as make you realize that even if you don't live in a place that has a lot of that sort of terrain where you can really go out there. I mean, I feel like any place you live has to have something that you can go experience, that whether it's just a park with a lot of trees or whatever it is, just to get that natural air and that sun, and those are the uh, important uh, attributes to being outdoors, is right, vitamin D, sunlight, clean air, and a clean head. you know?
Mhm.
So like for me, I mean, like what I do for a living, you know, which is I'm on the computer for 40 to 50 hours a week. And
Same.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you, man, but I mean, and I'm sure you find like for, you know, what works for you to get out of that headspace. But for me, it's the only way for me to get out of that. I mean, among other things for sure, you know, music and, you know, spending time with people that I enjoy spending time with, but really like being out there like in truly unspoiled like nature is what really like clears my head and enables me to come back home and do another week of that sort of thing. You know what I mean? It's definitely a cyclical kind of.
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel the same way. To me, being out in nature, it just helps me kind of recenter, rebalance a little bit. Because yeah, when you know you're stuck inside, stuck in at a machine, it's it can be a little tedious.
Yeah,
And being out in nature is something very different. Um, Especially when you actually do it yourself, just kind of alone. That's a whole nother, I think, type of experience. Because then you're really focused on the environment around you.
yeah. Well, I kind of, you know, I mean, like in my, I mean, you know, my channel, I've only really done 10 videos so far, which I mean, it's 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 not easy to do that sort of style, if you will, you know, because like typically when I do a video, it's just me by myself. Um, you know, so I got to go set the tripod up and walk back and forth and try and make it somewhat, you know, have some sort of continuity to it. And um, at the end of the day, you don't end up getting, you know, to accomplish maybe what you would have planned, you know, and what I normally do when I'm not filming, which is, you know, typically I like to challenge myself and cover a lot of ground and, you know, do things like peaks and find sort of a, you know, a goal that I set. Um, and that's not easy to do. Like filming it, I'm trying to hopefully get better at that going forward. Um, but I had to kind of like even just getting out there by myself in general, I had to kind of learn, you know, over the years, like what worked for me, you know, because again, you know, I'm out there recreating, I'm not surviving. I mean,
Right.
well, surviving, if you want to call it that, but it's like, you know, for my influence, you know, I'm out there mostly just having fun. Um, but you know, the prospect of getting out overnight into the backcountry can be a little daunting, and it does involve a bit of an adjustment to figure out like how can I be the most comfortable and not um, you know, like if I did get into a situation where it was dangerous or whatever it was, like sort of minimizing risks is what I like to call it when it comes to hiking. Is
Sure.
that the big game, because minimizing risk is all is how you really get out there and just enjoy it and don't have to really think about it too hard and just kind of let it flow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I don't overnight. I just don't really have that opportunity here. But um, you know, I've done it a few times, but it's been a while. But I certainly appreciate the extra effort you have to put in there.
Right. And you're in Pennsylvania, right?
In Jersey.
In
Yeah,
Jersey.
yeah,
Okay.
not far from Pennsylvania.
So you go like to the, was it like the Pine Barrens? I think there's up there, and
Pine Barrens is kind of like south. It's closer to the ocean, and it's kind of southeast of me. So that's kind of flat land, some marsh in there, some pretty like fun like kayaking in that area. But generally, I tend to go more northwest, which is where like the more hillier part of New Jersey is, because that's like the edge of the Appalachians. As much as elevation as we get here. So um, I do like a view occasionally. And other than that, it'll be maybe like a nature preserve or something. I try to it's nice to catch wildlife occasionally, so I appreciate that. Nature photography was my first photography love. So um, I love being able to catch what I can. I don't necessarily make specific trips for it. I just take my camera with me and something happens, something interesting happens. Take a lot of pictures of bugs because that's the easiest thing to find. So
Yeah.
macro lenses are fun.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, I mean, I don't really consider myself very advanced as far as a photographer goes, but I mean, I've done enough to know. It's funny with like nature photography, you almost don't even really have to be that good. If you could just find a good scene, then it speaks for itself, right? I mean, you can just shoot away, and then all you have to really worry about is your composition and your lighting or whatever, and then just let the camera do the work. And
It's certainly much more about just finding the right scene, or
right,
getting lucky enough to witness it. A lot of times you're like, oh crap, be like some wildlife, and you grab for your camera, and by the time you get in focus, it's off. So you never know.
yeah, I've had
But
sunsets where I had like just a few minutes to really get a good, and you get lucky sometimes, and sometimes you don't. If you just capture just the right moment, you're lucky enough, then you don't really have to do much except just frame the shot. And and then like most of my stuff in the last few years, it's just been on my cell phone. There's not really been any kind of, high quality thing. It was more just kind of like it was there, and then, like Instagram is kind of more of like a cell phone kind of site, even though,
absolutely, yeah.
a lot of people still post really, really great stuff. But yeah, it's I'm kind of hoping to like I'm starting to kind of like rediscover, my love for it, and trying to get a little bit better on my side of things, even though it's more about the video than it is the photo. But at least if I can find a balance between the two and still get the stuff that I want just for myself, outside of the video. Because when it comes to shooting like a video, it's kind of a whole different mindset. It's really just trying to figure out how far I'm gonna be able to get, um, on the trail, and also make it sort of engaging, because it does like I'll typically I can usually hike pretty fast and cover a lot of ground, but if I have to stop a lot and you know try and find the right shots, I'm learning pretty quickly. Even just in my first 9 videos were all just with my cell phone, but I just bought a new camera, and which I sent to you, and I think this one's going to work for me because it's the right size. It's not too heavy, and it's not too overbearing with a 30-pound pack to
Yeah,
do. You
yeah.
know,
I most of the time I hike with, again, it's not overnight, so I don't need, it's basically just water and then change of clothes. But um, I, I bring usually I carry two lenses. So I'll have a macro lens with me, and I have my like 7200, which weighs, way too long, way too
yeah,
much. So between the full size DSLR and the long lens, it's people are like, "Wow, your back is so heavy, your backpack's so heavy." But I'm like, I'm used to it, but yeah, I can't carry much more than that.
yeah.
Mm,
Not to mention that you want to be really careful with it, and
mm,
like a lot of it's always like here like the last video I did, it was like really windy conditions, so I had to like be really careful. The
mm.
tripod doesn't blow over and destroy the
Yeah,
camera, and
yeah,
I've already
yeah,
destroyed a phone doing that when I
yeah.
when I
I
first started. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there was one time where I slipped in the mud and fell pretty badly, but I've kind of developed I usually I do like a side sling for my camera. So my first instinct is just like save the camera, like
Totally.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll take an injury, but gotta save the camera. Those things are expensive.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. And mine's like, I've got a really light, piece of shit tripod that works fine if it's not too windy, but if that shit just starts kicking up, it's going to blow over pretty quickly, and I got to
yeah,
run back. And yeah, it's kind of it's kind of weird. I've seen like some of the like the way Les Brown did it, and I was like, man, he'd be like way out there with the camera. I still question whether he had maybe somebody helping him out, because he always maintained that he was doing it all just himself. And I remember I think he was doing a lot of stuff with like GoPros and things. And
yeah. I mean, that's probably typically how that type, that style of vloggers or videographers do that. And I know, like there's like a couple of um, the Ukrainian dude who did a very famous travel show and went on to do his own thing. And he when he started doing his own, he films most of it himself, which seems like I don't know. It always seems to me like so much work. But he also uses he uses drones a lot to add to so you can get a better picture. Um, that's a that's also a touchy side. What's your view on drones on hiking trails?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I still haven't seen. When I go out, I usually try to pick. I've got enough choices where I live in Colorado where I can really sort of get off the beaten path and really be away from the crowds. And so I have not seen it to a crazy degree, but I have been in situations where I heard something buzzing. I was like, "What is that?" Oh, it's a drone. Okay, I'm still not quite used to that whole idea, even though like some of the guys that I watch, they all utilize those things. I mean, I'm talking about some of these guys that have crazy amount of subscribers and you know definitely the funds to be able. You can get a pretty decent drone for I think like $500 or and
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely for like I'm so mixed on it because on one hand, I'm like, oh man, it would be cool to occasionally, be able to get that view, because you can't. There's no substitute for it.
right.
Um, I have a friend we went hiking with once, and he has a drone. So we went up. We got up to the top, and he flew his drone for a little bit, and got some cool video. And it was funny. I know when we got back down to a parking lot. He filmed a little bit from also from below, and I see this group coming towards us, and I'm like, oh man, were they like annoyed that we're flying a drone? But turns out there were the people that were doing rock climbing on the cliffs by where we were, and they're like, hey, did you get like video of us? If you do, can you like share it? So you never know. But yeah, it's a weird balance, uh, trying to you know try to get the benefit of a drone without impacting other people's experience of the outdoors,
Yeah,
so, and wildlife in general.
yeah, because you could definitely hear it in the distance, and I'm amazed at how like just uh, you know smooth those drone shots are. And so
Mhm.
there's a guy that we watch on YouTube. His name is Craig Adams, and he has a fantastic hiking channel. And this guy goes like all over the world, but he mostly shoots his videos himself. I'm pretty sure he does mostly everything, but he's been using a drone lately, and man, just some of the shots that he gets, like he'll get shots from him going, and then it just goes up, and I mean he'll be like in Patagonia or South America or somewhere really crazy, and just get this amazing shots. And I don't know that I would ever do that. I mean, like even if I ever got to a point to where I had like an insane amount of subscribers, I'm always gonna, which I don't really care about or expect to, but if I did, I would probably want to just sort of keep it more, like the leave no trace principle. Like try to keep
Right.
things very, very not. I don't want to be bothered, so I don't want to bother others. Type of mindset. You know what I mean? Because when you're out there, you're wanting that experience of no technology and out everyday life kind of stuff. You want to just be, at least I want to be, just sort of enveloped in the natural aspect of the land, and not be uh, not let those sort of things. And that's kind of a goofy thing to say because I might be sitting there and actually filming stuff myself, but you know what I mean. Like,
Well, yeah, it's a little different, right? Because
mhm,
just in terms of sensory output, right? That's
right. And like
so
for me, most of the time most of the time I'm not filming. I'm out there doing, recreating and doing my thing. It's, the video, the filming thing comes in, every now and then, when you're actually going to do it. And when I do it, I try to be as not as less intrusive as possible to anybody else that might be around. But when I do go film, I try to stay away from anywhere that's going to have a lot of people, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You'd probably have a bit of a harder time doing that here, considering just because it's more dense population wise. So
Yeah.
all the good hiking spots tend to be very popular.
Yeah.
And God forbid you you go on like the really good ones in a weekend.
Yeah. It's starting to get that way here. I mean, it's I live in South Colorado, and like the Front Range, which is like the first range you get into, it's starting to get a lot more popular. But there are definitely some of the bigger ranges because it's so vast out here. I mean, there's just so many peaks and valleys that you can go to find like the spots that sometimes don't even have trails. Um, and so you can definitely get lost for sure, even though it's getting more popular because a lot of people have been moving here, to Colorado. It's been growing and growing at a pretty crazy rate, but it's only a matter of time where we might all have cell service no matter where you're at. And, so people will feel more compelled. And I think the pandemic, and that's a good thing. I don't want to shit on it or anything. When the pandemic hit, a lot more people were getting outdoors,
Yeah, for
discovering
sure.
things.
Yeah, at one point, like when it was really bad, New Jersey actually shut down like the state parks. I'm like, what are you doing? Like that's the one place where people feel like kind of safe. Like, I guess they were, I don't know, being overly cautious, but you know, that was I was very annoyed. Not that they could really like, you know, what are we gonna do? Like set guards around? It's not hard to get into a park. So,
Yeah, that was the sort of thing where they like shut down everything pretty much because they just didn't know what to do, and it was like, well, as it turns out, getting vitamin D is like a really good thing for you if you're. So it was kind of an interesting thing, but they did kind of a similar thing out here. At least all the state parks were closed for a bit, But there's a lot of land out here that's just straight up, just national forest land that they don't regulate as hard. So they weren't. I mean, it's even if they told you like not to go out there, it was not like you were going to have any issues if you went.
right. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, I kind of figured. But yeah, man, I went to Colorado. We got to go there before we had our kid for like 10 days. My wife and I went, and man, we were just overwhelmed by how just how beautiful it was and how I don't know. I've never been in that kind of environment. First of all, that high up. um, I think the highest because we're close to the sea level here. So when you go when you go hike up elevation, even when we go to like our favorite place on the East Coast is Vermont, so we go there every year. And Vermont peaks top out at like 4,000 something generally. Um, where else? Your base in Colorado is I forget what it is, but it's way higher than that. So and you feel it, right? Just because when you're not used to it, for us, suddenly going up feels a lot different than it was back home. So obviously you're used to that, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say like I think Denver or Colorado, where I live in Colorado Springs, it's about 5,000 feet in elevation, just like in the plains here, because we're just like kind of situated right, right where it starts to go to lose elevation next to the first range of mountains. Excuse me. But most of the hiking that you'll do, and that's kind of one of the things I like about Colorado because it really kind of turns you into like you have to really work for it, so to speak. The hiking here is no joke. I mean, you start usually, at 8,000. If you're going to do a peak up here, you're going to start at like 8,000 feet already, But I think like one of the things I found is I'm not a Colorado native. I'm from Louisiana, so I grew up below
Right.
elevation, growing up west of New Orleans, and I lived there for 25 years, and moved to Colorado, and a lot of people that move here because there it is very much like a transient state. Like a lot of people, it really kind of depends on the person. Some people don't do very well with the elevation. Some people have no problems with it. And like, I mean, like when I got really high elevation my first time, like I felt a bit lightheaded, but it didn't really. I'm talking about like a hike. It didn't really hurt me too bad, other than just being really lightheaded and being kind of just maybe a little delirious. But and every now and then it still creeps in for me. Like, if I do like a tough peak, depending on how I'm doing that day, the elevation might get the best of me. I don't know. But it's more of a weak kind of feeling. It's not the type of elevation that will, necessarily like kill you or whatever, unless you're dehydrated or whatever. But I still maintain that like you guys have some amazing stuff on the East Coast, because I was just out there in Pennsylvania this
Mm.
last
Right.
October.
Right.
Uh, Me and my wife did some hiking in the Dolly Sods Wilderness in West Virginia, and it was amazing, just awesome. And there was so much I wish I'd have had more time for. Just like we went and stayed up, uh, up in the Hudson Highlands, and we went up to Sleepy Hollow for Halloween, and didn't have enough time to really go up there and really experience like some of the hiking I'm sure there is up there. And but it's a whole different ball game and a different feeling to it, and that's what I like about it. And I'm always like, when it comes to hiking, like I like different vibes and different feelings, when it comes to where I'm at, and Colorado is just one of those type of things, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's awesome to experience that kind of different environment. Again, for me, experiencing Colorado was very different,
Where
right?
where did you go when you were here?
So we started with Denver. So basically, during the day, we would drive out to the mountains, um, and then at night go back and hang out in Denver, experience the nightlife. So that was kind of cool.
It's fun. Yeah.
Then we spent a couple of days like right outside of Boulder, when it goes into the mountains, and then at Estes Park. So and then we just
Oh
did Rocky Mountain National Park.
man,
So
that's one of the best.
it's stunning. I was there's a couple places in my life basically where I've been where I was just stunned, and it was Colorado and it was Alaska. And yeah, Colorado's definitely left a lasting memory, and I definitely want to be back there. You know, I probably be a bit with small child now, but we definitely would love to be back.
Did you get to go to the Stanley Hotel in Estes? Yes,
Uh,
that was the place where Stephen King wrote The Shining.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I don't remember because I think most of the time we spent in the park and not so much in town. Well,
gotcha.
in town we just basically have dinner, have a couple drinks, and
Yeah,
but I loved it. It was so, so much fun. But it was so jarring to see, when you're, out in, Boulder, and where it's just flat as a shelf, and then just right away mountains. There's not like even like a much of a transition. It's just bam mountains, and it was forget coming from the East Coast. It was such a weird. Plus, when we got there, it was kind of a middle of a heat wave. So when we were out on the plane, it was almost 100 degrees a couple of days. But then that same day, we would drive up and get up to the peak, and there's snow there. That was very very crazy for me.
yeah. It's a weird thing. I mean, yeah, a lot of the snow usually stays up there until like late July, sometimes, depending on the snow year. Um, but if you ever get to go back to Estes Park, I think the Stanley Hotel would totally be up your alley, man. Like just the look of it and the feel of it, and it's it's supposedly haunted, and there's a lot of again Stephen King stayed there and wrote The Shining,
Right.
and so he kind of modeled the hotel after that place, even though if you watch the movies and stuff, it's not that place, but um, it's a very I don't even know what year it was built, but it's very old and it just has that feeling to it. It's got a spirit to it. You know what I mean? Like and you could just go down there to the you don't even have to stay there for the night. You could just go in and uh there's a restaurant like in the basement level, and you don't even have to eat there. You could just go to the bar and have a drink, and you can kind of just walk around the place and just get that the feels there because they say that every room is haunted, and it is overlooks the park right up there. But unfortunately, like now, I remember like when I first moved here, Rocky Mountain National Park, like it was like you could get in there really easily, and now it's almost like Yellowstone. It's so packed. Like you can't even drive in there. You have to get on the shuttle to get to some of the cool areas. But it's America's oldest national park, and I mean rightfully so. And um, it's got a feel to it that's different from because there's so many other areas you can go to here, but that one has the special special feeling to it for sure.
Yeah, it was it was very hard to drive through it because I was driving most of the time, and I'm too busy like looking at the views, which are incredible. But you also have to be careful and not drive off the road.
Did you guys go up to like up to the Alpine area and like over? Yeah,
Yeah.
that gets really windy up in there. There's a couple of hairy moments there that you have to
Mm.
make
And
sure.
then we ran into like a bunch of I guess mountain goats or whatever, and then elk up there, which is it's incredible. Like the photos I got from that were amazing.
Yeah, it's weird too there because the elk, like, it's not like if you go at like other places, like in the state, like the elk don't act like they do there because like they're used to not being hunted in the park, so they won't scare as easily. You can walk up to them a lot.
Yeah, where we were staying in Estes Park, there were a couple of elk just walked by us like on the road very slowly, like they know like cars are afraid of them versus vice versa,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
different from here in Jersey where deer get hit all the time. So,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
that was pretty crazy. We're like, holy shit, they're just right there.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't scare easily there. Whereas, like if you're out like in the backcountry outside of the park, like or even just like south where I am, yeah, you almost don't even see them because they're gone that quick because they're used to being hunted. In a lot of those areas, like some of the ones I go to are a little bit more hunter friendly, so it's the wildlife is a lot more skittish compared
Yeah,
to going to the park there.
yeah. Even like say like Vermont or New Hampshire, or whatever, and there's moose there, but you do not generally run into moose that much because they try to avoid people for the most part, and it's only kind of dawn and dusk where maybe they'll get out to some water.
Yeah,
And
I
what
mean,
was man, my favorite animal though in Colorado, and it was generally like around the peaks, but I'm forgetting the name, but they're like little like rodent like type creatures. I forget if they're actually rodents or not.
oh, the marmots.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my god. This is the funniest animal. It's just observing them is so funny.
Oh, they're hilarious. Yeah. I mean, I do, you know, like one of the fun things about if you're into like hiking and you live in the Colorado, like there's I don't know, there's just like 1,000 peaks here above like 12,000. And it's so many, and it's like sort of a journey if you start like getting into it. One of the big things here is the Colorado 14ers is what they
Right,
call
right.
it, the 14,000-foot peaks, right? There's 58 of them, and I've been slowly knocking them off over the years. And it's kind of like I was talking about before, like getting that challenge, getting that goal the goal oriented kind of mindset, like when you're doing hiking. But when a lot of times when you get above what we call tree line at about 12,000 feet, when there's no more no more
Right.
trees or vegetation other than like alpine terrain vegetation, that's where a lot of the marmots live. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and some of the they'll come a lot lower than that too, but they generally live pretty high elevation there. But they're the goofiest little bastards. And man, like I've got a place that I'm planning on doing a video coming up soon this summer, hopefully. Uh, I went out there. I don't. It was 2 years ago, and it's a brutal hike. And it's in the it's called the Sangre de Cristo Range, the mountains, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which is like I can get to pretty quickly from my house in Colorado Springs. Like it's about an hour and a half south, um, and it's a very rugged mountain range. It's there's a lot of trails there, but it's not uh, like it's not that people don't know about it. It's just people don't really go there because it's kind of hard to get to in terms of like the hiking. Like you really have to
Right.
hike a long ways before you get up like really high up into the alpine, like the lakes and stuff where they're really, desirable to go to. Um, but the last time I was there, I made it up above tree line to this really high alpine lake, and I set up my tent, and this fucking marmot, man, he just would not stop messing with my gear. Like, because if you like leave your stuff out, they'll come up and like
Right. I'll check it out.
oh yeah, they'll like I mean like trekking poles, like they'll come eat
Mhm.
the rubber off your trekking poles if you leave it sitting. So he kept coming and he kept going in. Like my tent was zipped up, but he kept um trying to get into my tent, and they'll tear holes in your stuff, like so. Like he kept coming up in there, and then I'd run over there, and he'd run off, and he just, dude, I went over and over again with this guy, and it like over 20 times, and I really, really got sick of him. And so I started throwing rocks at him because like he bit like a nice little hole into my tent fabric.
Mm.
Those tents are not cheap, the
Right.
backpacking
Right.
tents, so the guy was pissed off. I didn't even have any food in there or anything. I don't know what he's trying to get to. He was just trying to get in. And it was like sort of like underneath this sort of like rock outcrop. There was big boulders like right there, and he would come up top, look at me, and then as soon as I'd walk away, he'd come back down and try and get in there. And I started throwing rocks at him. I didn't get one at a time, but I found a good sized stick. I just chucked at him, hit him right in the head, just right in the forehead, and he just bolted off. Little fucker, and he just never came back. Thank God, because like I wanted to like go down to the lake and get water and things like that. I was like, man, he's gonna destroy my tent.
Mm.
They're cute as hell and they're funny, but man, they'll come
Just
right in.
troublemakers, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's kind of like, for anybody that sees this and never seen a marmot, it's kind of like a beaver, they're
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of beavers. I mean,
they're
minus
not
the
that big.
tail.
Yeah.
Maybe a little smaller, but
Mhm.
than beavers. But
They're
yeah,
funny. They're cute as hell, but man, it's just like a squirrel. They'll come,
yeah,
right.
and they're generally like in groups where it's almost like prairie dogs, where like if you see one, there's probably a bunch of others around.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And they make a really cool sound when they call out. Like when you're in the mountain valley, you could hear the echo like really far off.
Yeah, very fun. So, quick question: what was actually the inspiration behind the name Future Ruins?
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Borknagar.
I don't think so.
So Borknagar is they are they're kind of like a progressive like black metal band from Norway. They've
Hmm.
been around since the early '90s. I mean, a long time. And in fact, I got to see them live here in Denver a couple weeks ago, and I've been a fan of them for probably like 25 years. And they have not toured here until now, and it was cool. Kind of uh, a closing of a chapter to finally get to see them live. But they're some of the guys in that band, yeah, from Norway, and some of the guys in that band have played in like Dimmu Borgir and
Okay,
Arcturus, and
so the usual Norwegian black metal circuit.
yeah.
Hmm.
But these guys are kind of like they're a little more of a proggy type black metal. Like you could
Right.
probably find parallels with like Opeth and things like that. I think you'd probably dig some of their stuff since you're an Opeth fan. It's not like they have that sort of um, that they're kind of like rooted in that sort of black metal sound, but it's not straight black metal by any means. Very progressive, very melodic, but yeah, Bork Nagar. Well, they have a record from 1997 or 8, I think. It's called Quintessence, and the first track on the record is called Ruins of the Future.
Mm.
And yeah, that's where I got it from. I just swapped it around, and I just thought it was a cool name, because everywhere I go, like hiking wise and things, I always think it's like, well, this is kind of future ruins, right? Because this is going to be here this is going to be here long after I'm gone,
Yeah.
and hopefully.
No, I think it's an evocative name for sure. I
Yeah.
could easily see that as a kind of an album title. Or
Yeah. Yeah. Ruins of the Future by Bork Nagar. Yeah. It's the first track off Quintessence. And yeah, I've been using that moniker for a while now before I even started a YouTube channel. You know how it is, like when you get online and,
sure, of
pick a
course,
and yeah, so
yeah.
it's kind of, even my wireless is called Future Ruins. So I kind of just stuck and kind of seemed fitting, you know.
It's cool. So
Yeah.
how did um I get some more people.
Hey, Maya.
Um, how did your musical tastes evolve?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's see. So I'm 42 now, and no, 43, and I've been listening to. I mean, I had a sort of musical upbringing. When I was a kid, I was raised in, coming up in New Orleans. I went to Catholic school because, like, either you went to Catholic school or private school down in Louisiana, because the public schools were pretty bad.
Yeah.
Um, so I was fortunate enough to have parents that were fairly well off. So they sent me to Catholic school because I was traditionally raised in, Irish Catholic family. And so I did band from early on. I played clarinet and saxophone going into high school. And so I had learned symphonic band and jazz band and all that kind of stuff. And I even played drums going into high school for a while. But I don't know. I think early on for me, it was like I would watch MTV at my grandpa's house, like when I was, when my parents were out working or whatever it was, and learning about. That was my exposure to music. And I got into Guns N' Roses and things like that. The hair bands. I don't know what it was. I just liked the rock aspect of it. Nobody introduced me to any music when I was a kid. I just learned things on my own, other than, just like I said, like classical music, things like that. And I think the first like metal song I ever heard was Metallica One. Was they showed the
Mhm.
video on MTV, and I was absolutely blown away by it. Because it was a total 180. If you know the song, it's a total 180 from anything that you've ever heard, because it's so sullen and depressing, and maybe not depressing, but just it's a
I
very,
mean, lyrics are pretty depressing.
yeah, it's a very it's not, it's a moody piece for sure. But I the video just like knocked me off. I mean, just knocked me out. The drumming and the guitars sounding as heavy it was. It was like that converted me into being a metal fan instantly. And so from there, like all I had was MTV, so it would be whatever I saw there, and that remained like the heaviest thing until I got turned on to Headbangers Ball, which they would show at 10 o'clock on Saturday nights, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth on metal music, and it just devolved from there for me.
Seems like that was a gateway for a lot of people
Yeah,
because I mean, realistically, back then there were only so many venues for which you could find new music. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. From the ball, I learned about so many bands, and for me, like kid, 13, 14 years old, no identity, no real, I played sports, I played band. I wasn't really good at anything. I played baseball, I played football, I played all that stuff. I was always kind of like the middle ground kid, like I wasn't really a
Right.
dork, but I wasn't a jock. Like it was kind of so I didn't like get picked on too much, but at the same time, maybe a little bit, but I didn't fit in with the jocks and the
Mhm.
athletic guys as well, because my dad really tried to get me into baseball because that was his big thing. So, and it was, something cool that I shared with him, but I didn't care about any of that shit, like any of the sports, or I just wanted to, to me, like listening to metal music kind of gave me some sort of identity, and something I felt like it was for me, like it was me altogether, and kind of just went from there. Growing up, going to high school, like I kind of that mid '90s period when metal kind of died out, and I kind of went through this punk phase, and um, I always tried to like stay open minded about music. I liked hip hop for a while, and I wasn't really exposed to like the classic stuff, like the '70s stuff, until later. Um, but yeah, it just kind of skyrocketed from there. I was it went from Guns N' Roses to Metallica to Sepultura to ultimately death metal. I mean, just kept going, and so yeah, man. And since then, I mean, the metal genre had sort of a dip, and then it came back, and I found things like '70s music, progressive stuff, and getting to Pink Floyd, and um, ultimately things like Porcupine Tree, and then like bands like Opeth come out, and there's a whole new kind of thing going on, and just kind of went up and down from there. And just I've always been, I think, open minded when it comes to music, even though I'm an unabashed metalhead. I'm always trying um, to remain, because like for example, my wife, like she likes some metal, but she's more of a wild child '70s kind of spirit, and she
Sure.
so it's more of that old stuff, and which is great, and I love that shit. It's like it's not the sort of thing that like that I listen to every day, but I can definitely find. I always find these days like anything that I mean I could say that I could get into anything aside from just like um mainstream like pop music or something like that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think I can appreciate pretty much anything.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. Like, it's not even yeah, like, if I had to pick a genre I like the least, yeah, I think it's just easier to say, like, yeah, I don't like things that are intended for, like, top 40 because that generally I don't find interesting. But yeah, I think even most people, even when they have, like, a strongly preferred genre or it's, metalheads or, I come a bit from, like, the goth industrial scene, but I think people who really love music, I'm never really limited to that. They might listen to it more, but there's always other things you enjoy just because it's good music.
Yeah. And I also like I always try to be open minded, you know what I mean? Because like I realize that like a lot of people, in my life, and they're not going to get like the death metal and all that kind of stuff, which I don't expect them to. But I always try to like stay open minded so I can, say, well, you know, I want to give like people that are into metal like more of a like look and I think it's true that like metalheads are a lot more open minded than most music listening people. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, people that are in the country or whatever, they're not going to be very open minded to say like, industrial or um, synth wave or whatever it is. I mean, like, whereas I think metalheads get a poor rap because, and then that's the other funny thing is that people don't really know about metal music, don't really realize the wide breadth of different types of sounds that you can do with metal, and also how metalheads can be a lot more open-minded to other music other than that, because a lot of that music influences people that play metal. It's just usually
Right.
just heavier, right?
Yeah. I mean, and to a certain degree, I think metal is just technically more complicated and complex, and so you have to have more musical discipline to get into it, which generally means you're like music. So, and I think that's why you see different influences in metal from other different genres, and that's why I think people who listen to metal also cross genres a lot in their preferences. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
It's
becoming a fan of Steven Wilson was an affirmation of that for me because he likes certain metal stuff and he had an influence on metal bands that he likes had an influence on him. And that's a perfect example of that, that it doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, like how heavy it is or whatever, I mean, or the term metal, it just, to me, it all kind of translates together, you know?
yeah, it's I don't know, and especially these days now that metal is so diverse, it's hard to even define what metal is for me. You know,
Well,
Mm,
that's the big thing, right? I mean, like, I don't like telling people like that don't know what it is, like, oh, I'm a metalhead, because when you say you're a metalhead, people that don't know, like, that kind of puts you in a smaller box than they have any idea about. You know what I
sure.
mean? Like, but I could easily say I'm a metalhead because it's very true, and I am. But you're going to understand what that means a lot better than say like, you know, my mother-in-law or something. That doesn't really have a perspective on metal music. They're just going to kind of think about maybe that one thing they saw that sounded awful to them that I'm not even a fan of. You know.
Yeah. So, how would you um how would you describe um how how heavy music plays into your kind of like outdoor activities, adventures? Because there's quite a bit of a contrast going on there between what potentially is more of a quieter, calming environment that is what you see hiking, and then the more intense um, feeling you get from heavy music.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I mean, like, and that's kind of it's a funny thing because if it's even like taking that whole idea further, is if it's not like a band like Cannibal Corpse is going to fit with hiking or something like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's very much the black metal aesthetic, which is very rooted in nature and maybe not like, and I'm not talking about like the sort of, I mean, there's a lot of angles to black metal, but and one of the biggest angles that most people might be most familiar with is more satanic evil side of things, and maybe like that's just kind of one aspect of the music, I think, and there's a lot of black metal out there that there is that idea that's sort of pagan, not necessarily satanic, because there was a whole idea being like satanic, and it was kind of more just a a rebellious kind of idea with a lot of bands, but the black metal that I'm referring to is more rooted in that feeling of the sort of primal spirit of the human experience. It's and I can I can bring up certain bands that have that, but I think that was what drew me to a lot of black metal, was that sort of um, that that call for nature. And I think the first band that really made me realize that is a band called Agalok.
Yeah, I was about to mention that,
Yeah,
just from their shows, and I think you get a sense of it. I think it's like, well, if you could pick a band to play a show out in the wild somewhere.
yeah. When I first heard the debut Agalok record, is called Pale Folklore, and I closed my eyes and it just like transported me to the forest. Like I could see those epic Pacific Northwest forests and the animals, and there's a real vibe to that sound. And Agalok is not necessarily like they have elements of black metal. They're not necessarily true black metal band, but
Sure.
that's kind of like it's rooted in that sort of kind of feeling. Because there's heaviness to it, but there's also the acoustic side and the melodic side of it, and the lyrical aspect of it as well. Like if you and the visual, everything about it. If you pick that first record up and look at the pictures, there's the guy that's looking out the window in a snowy landscape. Um, I felt like I was sitting there with him, listening to some of that music. They really translated that to the music, and that's kind of where those sort of things. And I think that these days there's a lot of bands doing that more, the black metal style, that it's kind of more rooted in the natural aspect. We can talk about Wolves in the Throne Room,
Yeah,
or
I was going to ask you what are your like top 5 hiking metal?
yeah, I mean, and I know you'll know this one because I remember you mentioning it on one of those streams. I know you like the Celestite record, the ambient Wolves in
Right,
the
right.
Throne Room
Yeah.
record. That's
I and that's type yeah, that's generally a style that I can get into, I think, more easily.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put that on, when it's really dark before I go to sleep, and if I have like a really clear sky and I can really see the stars, like I'll throw that record on because that translates right to it. It just puts you right there. But yeah, I would say like the Agalok stuff, the Wolves in the Throne Room, even things like Nachachwin, this is more of a Native American kind of feel to it. It's not even really black metal, but it's metal. It's metal stuff, but then there's acoustic stuff. Um, things like that, and I could go on. I mean, there's tons of bands that when it comes to the black metal aesthetic, I want black metal to do that to me. I want it to be transportative. I want it to sweep me away to another realm of existence, and that's what I feel when I'm outside in nature, because you don't get that feeling when you're walking down the street on cement, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd be happy to put together a top 10 for you. I'd have to go look because there is a lot that will translate to that feeling.
Well, maybe you could do that for your show sometime.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like what I've tried to do, like with the videos, is like kind of
Yeah,
put some of that in there, but I think it's probably going to be a little bit less going forward because you get hit with copyright stuff.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
sure.
kind of have to just make it more of a, again, like the hiking style video. Just kind of want to make it to like where I can take you along with me and then maybe talk a little bit about it and not, lose that sort of little aspect about it is the metal part of it. But I think that anybody that likes those types of bands can concur that those are the settings that work the best for that type of music. And for me, it's like I don't want to call it like a religious thing. It's just more of a mindset, that's a good place for me to be.
Well, spiritual. I mean, I'm not religious, but I can relate to being spiritual. Um, and I think music is probably what gets me there the best. Like the closest, like the closest I think I've had to like religious experience over some of the live shows I've seen, like Tool, on I think it was the Lateralis tour. That was, I mean, it's kind of difficult to describe. Um, and maybe like maybe bands, not necessarily metal, but like band Halong. I don't, I don't know how to
You
pronounce
know
it.
what? That's a great. So like I'm not too familiar with their stuff, but me and my wife started watching their live videos, and she loved shit like that. And yeah, as soon as they come back, we're going to go see them play for sure because that's just cool
It's
stuff.
it's a show. Yeah, I've never seen them live, but I've seen videos of the show, and it's yeah, it was like I can definitely see getting into that.
Yeah, that's definitely like a real, like a tribal kind of, very. I think that they like what they're doing. Like when I watch some of that high lung stuff, is I think they're doing something very similar to a lot of these like black metal bands. It's a primal spirit, you know.
Primal, yeah, that's the kind of the word that first
Yeah.
popped into
So
my
that's kind of
mind.
where like the blast beat comes in. Like the black metal blast beat, and sometimes that could be a little overbearing, but um, it kind of goes down to that sort of cryptic level.
But also, if anybody in the local tri-state area likes that sort of thing, there's a local band that I'm know personally called the Destruct Principle. Highly recommend seeing them live.
The Destruct Principle,
Yeah, I'll put
and that's
the
kind of like the high lung thing, or is it?
yeah. I mean, it's not like the exact same thing, but certainly there's a lot of you know. I think there's a lot of similar vibes in a way. Very again, very primal, very tribal, um,
Yeah,
and they put on a great show. I mean, they don't half-ass it.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was the whole idea, between the marrying the music with the hiking is, to me, it all fit together. You know what I mean? And um, I'm kind of hoping that other people, find that sort of symbiosis with it as well, as much as I do. Because to me, it's a very important thing. I mean, it's a yin and yang thing: the music and the being out there. You know,
Yeah, yeah. That's probably another good way of putting it. I mean, it is that kind of like the calm of nature and the violence of metal. There is certain yin to it. Sure.
yeah. But like when it gets dark and whatever, I'll start to look for more like ethereal type music,
Yeah.
or like things like the Celestite record, or like acoustic kind of things, or um, like the Nachachwan acoustic stuff, and that's real like um, that stuff is very rooted in like Native American folklore and uh, natural things and natural places. The Panopticon stuff. It's Americana. Um, like there's a band I like. I'm gonna have to send this to you, Serge, because if you like that Celestite, there's a group. There's a death metal band called Augury from Canada, but it's one of those like progressive like tech death type bands. But the guitar player has a side project called Humanoid, and
Mm.
it's all, and this guy is like a classically trained acoustic guitar player, and it's all like real. It's got like synthy kind of stuff, and it's not really like ambient like that Celestite record, but it's mostly acoustic guitar. But it just, I don't know, there's just a feeling to it that, like, when you're out there sitting looking at the stars, it fits right with the name of the record is called Remembering Universe, and and it just has that feeling to it, and it really kind of adds to, like, if you're sitting out there and able to see a really amazing like view of the Milky Way or something like that, as you get like some of these clear skies. I got some clear skies when I was in Balisods in West Virginia, so it's not just in the West. You can get that out there as long as you don't have any natural light anywhere. You can really
Not
get that.
not so much here. I think you have to go like 4 hours at least to get to what I forgot the term for, like an area where you can there's low enough light pollution where you can see the sky properly. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not great here, unfortunately.
that's the key. You got to get away from the the lighting of the cities, and to really get those views. But yeah, that's stuff like that, man.
But talking about all this, when I was in Colorado, man, unfortunately, it was you know I didn't have a chance to actually see anybody there, but we got to stop at Red Rocks and just check out the area. And I don't know, speaking of just music and the outdoors, I can't think of a better place that I've ever seen. That just being there felt to me, I just think of like what it would be like to actually see a band there. So I think you're very fortunate to have a venue like that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I've seen quite a few. I've seen Rush there like 4 times, I think. I saw that the Opeth Mastodon Devin Townsend, which was like a big win for the metalheads, because like you don't, I don't know if I've ever heard death growls in Red Rocks before, so that was
Mm.
really cool.
And Opeth, I think, filmed the Red Rocks, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah, they released that on vinyl and CD. I've got every format of that just because I was there. So it was like, got the vinyl somewhere I was. Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, something about the rocks there, just the sound is incredible. Um, Unfortunately for Opeth that night when they headlined, the wind kicked up like really hard, and it really messed with the acoustics. So it wasn't like as good as it could have been, but just because it was really windy. But yeah, I've seen a few concerts there, and it's a pretty profound experience, especially like when the sun's going down, you can see Denver off in the distance, and the way if you were there, you saw the configuration of the seating it goes up, so if
Right.
you're higher up you are, you can really see the skyline.
Yep. Mhm.
But it's yeah, it's a really unique kind of experience to see a concert there.
Yeah. So yeah, if I knew, maybe I would have scheduled the trip so I could actually see somebody play there. But
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely recommend if you go visit Colorado, do check out an actual show there.
Yeah, and even if you can't check the show out, you could still go there and go walk around the venue. Like,
Yeah, and there's trails where you can go up,
Mhm.
just to go around the rocks. I mean, just because just the natural formations are amazing.
Yeah,
Between that and Garden of the Gods, I mean, it's again things I've never seen before.
yeah, it's an interesting you know uh, whatever that conglomerate rock or whatever they call it is. It extends from Denver all the way down here because Colorado Springs is about an hour south, and even further south, you find rock formations like that. There's the Garden of the Gods here, and then there's Red Rocks Park, which is a little bit further south, and it's all the same kind of formations, like going all the way up to Denver. Is kind of neat. A little bit different than a lot of the other rock formations that you see in Colorado. It kind of resembles something you would see like in South Utah.
Yeah, yeah, that's the. I mean, just I guess from like that, just the color itself, that like kind of like orange, reddish color. Yeah,
Yeah,
like it felt more like something, like I'd see at Zion or maybe.
totally. Which is a cool place. Yeah,
So
I go out to South Utah a lot because it's only about I can get there in about 6 or 7 hours, and that's a whole another world, man. It's like Mars or something. It's
yeah, yeah, that's on the list of places. Um, too many places to little time, man. Yosemite was another place that was very unique. Just, I mean, just the scale of it.
Did you go there?
Yosemite, not, no, did I say Yosemite? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, Yosemite, yeah. Where like
California?
like the Half Dome and the El Capitan. It's just crazy. I remember seeing, watching people climb El Capitan, and it just looks like ants. Like you have to zoom in to really see the people there. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, you really can't, imagine. I mean, if you see it on video, like you can't really, fathom really how huge it is until you're standing there and looking up at it. It's really, I mean, I only went there once, got to spend a couple nights. I haven't really gotten to really get up in there and do, you know, extensive hiking or anything, but got to go in the valley there and see
Right.
El Cap and Half Dome, and yeah, it's really quite a sight in person for sure.
Yeah, we spent a few days there. I was with my parents. I couldn't like do like heavy hiking or anything, but
Same, yeah.
it was again another place I'd love to come back. But yeah, like the sequoia trees. I mean, is again unique sight for me.
Yeah, we saw some of the. Actually, I went to the redwoods, which is like further north,
Right, right.
and I saw some of the sequoia trees. The sequoia trees are way bigger than the redwoods, but there's something about the redwoods that it's it's kind of like walking in Jurassic Park or something. It's like prehistoric times. Really, really cool. It's like north North California, like on the coast, is the coolest ones. But I mean, I pretty much all those parks there. I pretty much just passed through and got to spend like a day or so, and not really get to do too much. But because even from here, I mean, that's a 2-day drive, you know.
Right. That's not too bad. Yeah. Here in East Coast, it's I'm mostly limited to the near things, which are not necessarily as different from from New Jersey. If you go up and down a couple of states, it's still flora and fauna is still more or less the same.
So, how long have you lived in Jersey?
It's not too long. Since 1990, I think. Yeah. So we came to the US in '89. So I spent a year in New York, New York City, and moved to Jersey. Yeah, been here ever since.
89, so 90. Yeah.
But
So, yeah.
it's kind of actually still a cool location because I feel like, well, I'm near population centers in terms of New York and Philly. Every show you could possibly want. Every tour will stop here, and
Mhm.
talk about like golf industrial scene. Certainly New York and Philly has quite a bit as far as that goes. Obviously, it's an underground scene, so it's not as big as some others. But where I live, I'm still close enough to nature where I can just go walk on a trail, on the way to from work or something where it's I don't have to go far, and I'm within hour and a half of both the ocean and you know mountains, not Colorado mountains, but trails where it'll still make you sweat. So
Oh man, I mean, I was blown away by the terrain over there because, like I said, I mean, it's a whole different feeling, and I don't really have too much experience on the East Coast. Like when I was a kid, my dad would take us on trips to my dad was like a huge history buff, and he'd take us to we went to DC a couple times, we went to Baltimore once, and a couple of Boston trips, and it was all like historical kind of U.S. history kind of stuff, and uh, that was really the only experience I had over on the East Coast, other than being from the South and ultimately moving to Colorado. But this last trip I was telling you about, where we went, did some hiking in West Virginia. It was crazy because it was like we were in Pennsylvania, then we went to West Virginia, and then we were like in the middle of nowhere in the Dolly Sods Wilderness, me and my wife, like in cold ass weather in October. Right after that nor'easter hit, like it was that
mhm.
last October, and then like 2 nights later, we were in New York City and watching To Kill a Mockingbird with Jeff Daniels on Broadway. It was just like it's so different than like out here, where it's just like there's so much distance you have to you know go across to get to different places, whereas like in the East Coast, it's like you could be everywhere really quickly. And it's just I found that really, not being from there, it was a very foreign and interesting thing for me. But one of like my favorite hiking YouTube channels is these guys called Adventure Archives, and it's these young guys. They're way younger than us. They're like in their late 20s, like early 30s, and they have a fantastic channel, and they're total nerds, man. Like botany type nerds, and like they'll go up to like the plants
Mm,
and like discuss the mushrooms, and but all the hiking that they do is on the East Coast. It's all um, they do a lot of stuff in Virginia and Ohio and um, Pennsylvania, and like they highlight places that I would have never even heard of, and if it wasn't for these guys, a lot of like, and I'm like amazed by like all the national forest land in all those states, and it's like that's how I learned about dolly sods in West Virginia, and it's such a unique, cool place. I mean, it's like so different from here. It's got a vibe to it. Uh, um, you don't have to have high peaks to have really great wilderness. It's like um, those places out there. Like I learned pretty quickly that, yeah, I was just like want to live out here just so I can really experience the hiking out here. You know what I mean? But just spending that time, just like upstate New York and just seeing like the possibilities was like, wow. I wish I had like a lifetime to spend up here.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's never enough time. That's why I felt like about Colorado. I'm like, man, it was feels like you need a few lifetimes just to explore this state.
Now, so you, okay, so you've been in New Jersey since '90, then, right? That's what you said.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah,
just a year younger than me. We're pretty much the same age,
yeah,
close.
44. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, or older. Yeah. Okay, so I'm 43. Yeah, yeah. But you grew up. So you grew up in Russia
Yeah,
or
Moscow.
in Moscow?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so you guys, so you would have came. I mean, you were still pretty young when you guys came over.
Yeah, I mean, again, 12, right? So I was old enough to, I mean, have, significant memories of my childhood in Russia, but yeah, but I was, came here young enough to where at this point I'm certainly spent most of my life here, I think, in English, so
Had you learned? I mean, I would assume that Russian was your first language, though, right?
of
I
course,
mean,
my only language until until I got here.
until you came here and then you
Yeah.
learned. Yeah. Wow. I mean, because that's one of the things that's funny about being an American, like born, is that like we're so dumb because we don't really learn any other languages. Like we just know one. It's like people.
Right. I mean, it's a bit isolationist, right? Because you don't have too many you don't border too many countries, and it's a long distance to go to visit a lot of them, right? So where else it's a little different in Europe. Although growing up in USSR, we were very much isolated too because you couldn't just go abroad. So
Yeah.
when but for Europe, it's normal for people to grow up knowing multiple languages and cross borders all the time. So it's a little different here. I wish people had more visibility into other places, other cultures, other languages.
Yeah. That's one of the things I laughed at because I got really friendly with an Australian fellow from work that was traveling over here a lot, and this guy had lived like all over the world, and like he was just like listening to him talk made me realize like how unworldly like we really are over here because like yeah they go on like walkabout and all those kind of things and they he had lived in London for years and then he went back to Australia and then he was traveling the US a lot and just had a really like unique. And even at the time, I felt like I didn't really understand even what was happening in the rest of the world and what you hear here. You know,
Right.
um,
Well, again, it's easy to be kind of insulated from that because it doesn't directly impact you. So yeah.
so would you ever go back there? Oh, I mean, you're pretty young, so
I mean,
well, I mean,
certainly not unless
now,
there's a major regime change. Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
fuck that. But um,
Was
yeah,
that part of
but
why you got?
I have not been back. I don't know. I'd feel weird, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, but you're like your parents, like all your family are all here as well, or
Yeah, I have a small family, and yeah, they're all here. So we don't have a. I mean, there's obviously my parents have friends and back there. Not I left young enough to where I didn't really stay in touch with people, especially back then. There was no internet, so you couldn't easily stay in touch. So I and I know at least a couple of people that that I was friends with when I was younger have also moved on to different places. Like one guy's in the UK, and so you know, I'm not sure if if let's say there was no if it was a normal country and I could visit, um, I don't know if I could find anybody. I guess maybe there might be somebody still in like the old like neighborhood, like the the big apartment building that I lived in. But who knows?
yeah, yeah. The whole thing is pretty crazy, man. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but it's I don't know. I just hope the best for everybody, for real. We'll just
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I don't know what I can say, without just getting too angry about it. But it's pretty. It sucks. I don't know. Especially when, you know, I mean, I left a long time ago, right? So it's not like I don't know if I in in terms of my identity, right? It's I feel like okay, I'm American, right? I still have I'm Russian. My wife is Russian, so like we were trying to raise our kid like to learn Russian first because they'll pick up English anyway. So it'd be good to be bilingual. But it's like now that like you almost feel dirty by just you know it feels like even that part of your culture and your heritage is you know ruined by what's happening now. So um, I'm
yeah,
just glad I'm not there. I can't thank my parents enough.
yeah. Well, they I always read that. I guess it kind of makes sense because I remember what book I was reading, but from what I understood, that like Russian is really really tough to learn like later on in life, like the actual language.
I'm sure it is. Like, man, I would not want to try to learn it if I didn't already know it because, yeah, just grammatically, it's especially when you're used to English because English is pretty straightforward grammatically. I mean, yes, there's a lot of exceptions to different things, but English is kind of like almost a hack in a way because we're like, screw gender, screw this, screw that, just simplify the rules. Where else, in Russian, there's three genders for nouns, and adjectives and verbs have to agree with them, and it gets fairly complicated. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do not envy people who try to learn it as a second language.
Well, I remember you were saying, I think it was like one of the last streams I caught you on that you were teaching your son first, right? Um,
Yeah,
is that just so like he just learns it first? Because that's probably the easiest time to learn it when they're young.
right, right. Yeah, I mean they say right, kids learn better, and I think it's hard to learn later. So I don't know. It's I, we'll see how that all works out, but.
Yeah,
And it's funny because my wife and I generally speak English to each other, so it's an adjustment for us to you know to speak Russian more.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's like I think like when you go to high school here, like you either have a choice of doing Spanish, French, and in some cases, like I think Italian. And if you're like really like on the honor roll, like you might be able to do like a Latin class,
Mhm. We
which
we also had German in my high school, and
and German. No.
yeah, and I took French because I also took French in Russia, so I felt like oh maybe I'd like remember some stuff, but I did not remember anything.
Okay.
I think when I came here and I had to learn English, that it just overwrote that part of my brain that knew French. So I kind of I had to relearn it, but I learned it very poorly. I don't think we had a great teacher for French, so I took it for 4 years and I didn't feel like I was conversational. Or else the kids that took German were like walking around the halls talking to each other in German. I'm like, hell. It helped me a little bit when I got to go to Montreal, got to go to Paris, but incrementally.
Yeah, I took 1 year of French, and yeah, I don't remember anything. It was kind of like one of those like hybrid. It was like French history as well as learning language, which is probably like pushing a little bit. And mind you, this is Catholic school, so they thought, oh, let's throw everything at them, where you didn't really learn anything in terms of like the language, or at least try to retain any of it, because that's not an easy language to speak, or to at least retain if you don't, unless you're really immersed in it. I guess. Um, even I would say any other language as an English speaking person is not going to be easy to learn unless you really immerse yourself into it and practice it a lot. Um, it's almost like they teach those, like you have a class in high school just to kind of maybe um, plant a seed, that you might go that way and learn it, but
Yeah.
otherwise you're not going to get much any, you know.
In the end, you can't learn language without immersion. You, you
No.
you have to go to a place that speaks it and try to communicate. Nothing taught me English better than coming here. And at first, I had no idea what was happening, right? But that summer, my parents sent me to a sleepaway camp. They had to deal with trying to find income and all of the stuff. It's all of the difficulties that were involved with immigrating. So yeah, so I went to summer camp and 24/7, right? So it, you kind of didn't have a choice. So I learned English. So it worked out.
What
Yeah.
was, I mean, summer camp, you mean like, was it actual, like a camp, or was it more just,
No,
uh,
it was like went in the Poconos for a month.
in the Poconos? Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which is it was a pretty fun camp. I had pretty fun memories of it. Fortunately, like I got stuck in a bunk with these kids from Long Island and who were pretty cool to me, which I appreciate because that wasn't my experience with like in middle school here. So I was still like the weird foreign kid, but fortunately they were cool and they helped me learn. And that's also I spoke about this I think on another stream, but that's also where I picked up the initial seed for my music taste because they were huge Floyd fans. So that's what started it all.
Yeah. I mean, that's the type of band you kind of need to be sort of introduced to. I mean, especially like I wasn't really hip to Floyd until a little bit later in my development as a music fan. But once that Floyd bug bites you, it bites hard. You know.
Yeah, yeah, especially if it's early on and you're because I think the music um, relationships you form early are very strong. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, my summer camp experience was not as good. It was like sweltering heat, Mississippi, with like a lot of mosquitoes and
mm,
and just like yeah,
yeah, man, I don't know how people survive in Mississippi, Louisiana in the summer. I don't
it's
know.
it's it,
I couldn't handle it. Like I love visiting. I've a couple good friends that live in New Orleans, so we're happy to visit them in a different month, not in this certainly not like May through September.
have you ever been there?
Where?
New Orleans?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I love New Orleans. Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, to visit. No, I'm not, I'm not sure I could survive living there.
It's a different world for sure, man. I mean, like for me, like it's like in the summertime, it's like 100% humidity index, and I moving to Colorado, it's so dry here. It was like perfect for me because I sweat like a beast. Um, but yeah, dude, I my hometown was about 15, 20 miles west of the city, and but my high school was right there in the Ninth Ward, like right by the city, which was wiped out by Katrina,
Mm,
and it's consistently being battered. And it's still kind of a shithole anyway because it's a lot of um, just crime ridden, and but it's kind of a unique experience like growing up there because it's kind of different from the rest of the country in terms of like the way they operate down
yeah,
the French Quarter and
it's a
yeah,
strange place. Well, yeah, I mean, New Orleans as a city is a strange place, and then the French Quarter is also is as a whole another place itself. So I think.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's it's another world. It's like I enjoy, like I was it was cool to grow up there, but I kind of I'm glad that I don't live there anymore. Like most of my family still lives down there, um, but because the South is kind of like it's kind of like most people there they don't really leave or like it's people are kind of grounded there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
It's
weird.
hard. It's hard to leave. I think in a lot of situations, right? It's you a have to take the risk and or b have connections elsewhere and the resources to do it. So yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah. So did you because I love your Instagram page, man. Like did you like kind of learn photography on your own or
I took one class in high school, which I don't think you can count. Although it taught me the basics, and back then that was film, right? So you couldn't cheat, right? So I think it helped just to ground me in the basics of how camera works, how light works, and then yeah, from there I just I love taking photos. So I grew up with my parents, taking us on hiking trips all the time, which is why I love hiking. I grew up with it. So yeah, I would have a camera with me and I'd take photos. So and then eventually after college, where I was where I got into the golf industrial scene and I got into the aesthetics of that, and I had some friends, a lot of creative friends, and then eventually I was like, oh, let me get into like people photography or studio photography. So those are I guess my two most frequent genres of photography. Although I try to do a little bit of everything. I've shot like live music, and whenever friends ask me to do something, I try to, even if it's not necessarily my wheelhouse.
yeah. Yeah, you were showing me that model you're shooting with right now, that Canon model that you're shooting with was like I was like pretty close to like jumping on it, and then I was like, well, I kind of just wanted to like start minimally, and then maybe I'll like work my way up to something like that, depending on like where this whole thing goes, and even just like kind of getting more into the more still photography versus like the video side of things, and kind of
But honestly, I think if you're starting off now, I think you're better off mirrorless regardless. So
yeah,
and especially when you have to lug it around, I think that's a big plus too.
yeah, yeah,
I think I'm just stuck with I don't want to reinvest in glass or anything. So what I have now works for me. So
buy it one time. Yeah, it's kind of the same with like you know like hiking gear, like camping gear, stuff like that. It's like, you might spend a lot, but you might buy something that'll last you for a lifetime. So it's like fine. It's like the higher end stuff. It's like it's always like comes down to like you get what you paid for.
yeah, generally, yeah, and with photography hardware, right? Like the bodies of you'll eventually have to replace because a they wear out, and b that's what tends to change the most frequently in terms of features. It's the glass that you want to that you want it to last, because that can last a very long time if you take care of it. So
Yeah.
and it's usually the most expensive part.
Yeah, for sure. But you got into like you guys do like all this costumes and stuff too. Do you do that all yourself as well? Or is that
I don't make them, although I've been teaching myself sewing somewhat, but I'm not very good at it. So, um, I over the years I kind of put together a shoot wardrobe from like vintage things and other stuff that I'd find. Otherwise, it's just the models bring their stuff, and a lot of times they have some pretty amazing outfits.
for sure? Some of that stuff like it feels like um I don't know if like vintage is the right word, but it looks like it was like made like I don't know 100 years ago or something like that.
Well, I mean, some of it is vintage or just retro, right? In terms of style, right? It's not necessarily made a long time ago, but has draws inspiration from it. Um, I just find that usually more interesting, um, just aesthetically. So a lot of, I think, modern closet clothes are for the most part simpler, and sometimes they're just more boring. So
Mm-hmm. That's badass. Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, well, I don't know what kind of you got any show. Are you going to the Death Fest or any of those shows?
oh, um, maybe unless there's something last minute.
Yeah.
I'll go back to this comment from Jeff. Are you sad about this number?
Mm. He's talking about me because I,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. Oh, yeah. They canceled, and I was really looking forward to see that band, but it is what it is. It's it's like, I mean, like in today's climate.
Yeah, I feel like there's never a guarantee, especially like at a multi-band event. You just never know. It's like assume that 33% of of the bands will drop. So
Yeah. Yeah, and if that's all it is, then it's cool. There were some cool replacements to Autopsy, and I forgot the other band because Bloodbath's not going to make it. But I mean, it's kind of cool for me because I've never really been to any kind of like big festival like that. I mean, being on the West Coast and South, like we didn't really have any kind of festivals. It's always just shows, which is cool. But Sunday night, yeah.
why you gotta make me go on the work night, man? Come on.
Well, Monday is Memorial Day, so I don't know if you guys have Memorial Day off, but
Oh shit! You know what? That's
yeah,
what's that? Is that the week the Memorial Weekend, huh? Yeah, so that's probably not gonna work anyway because I think my wife is working that weekend. Sorry, Jeff.
well, he wasn't sure if he was gonna be able to make it anyway, so just
Yeah,
tell
I
him.
mean, it would be nice to go. I haven't been out for quite some time. I did finally see a show um, when I went to see Niaz. That was like a very small, intimate show, which is cool. Yeah, definitely been a while since I've been to that scale of an event.
Yeah, yeah, it's I don't know, it's kind of interesting because it was like there was no shows and now there's like a billion shows to go to at least.
Oh, everybody's catching up, right? Are you going to the whole uh, Metal Fest, the Maryland Death Fest?
Yeah, yeah, I'll be there. I'm gonna fly in Thursday, so yeah, I'll be there for all 3 days.
Okay.
Um, I've got I've got a friend that lives in Pennsylvania that I'll be. Well, he lives in Philly. I'm sorry, which is Pennsylvania, of course, but yeah, Philly. So I'm gonna fly out there and stay with him, and we've got a friend that lives in DC, so we're gonna. I guess we're gonna be crashing at his place. But yeah, it's kind of like I said. It's like for me, it's I've never been to a big fest like this, so it's kind of a first. Even though this might be the last Death Fest that they do, but um, yeah, there's a lot of bands that I'm really really stoked to see, and yeah, it'll just be cool. And then there's a festival this summer in Wyoming. It's called the Fire in the Mountains Festival,
Mhm.
and it's like another kind of like 3 day thing. It's not nearly as big as like the Death Fest, but it's like Enslaved and a bunch of black metal type bands, and it's at like a ranch that like is right overlooks the Grand Tetons by the Yellowstone,
Okay, yeah,
and it's all
that's
outdoors, and
cool.
yeah, so that should be cool. It's like Enslaved and Yob and
Okay.
a lot of cool bands. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, Jeff. I don't know. Yeah, it seems like cases are ramping up again. So who knows? I don't know what the situation will be by the end of May. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. It's. I mean,
uh,
it kind of feels like things were ramping down, but I don't know. I mean,
yeah, well, now it's back. I don't know. I guess it's just cyclical at this point. I guess it's never going to just go away. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, it's probably always gonna be there. It's just at what level is it though? Is always the question. But
yeah.
um, so we'll see. But yeah, it should be cool, man. So it's kind of be that trip and then the Fire in the Mountains thing in July, and I'm kind of hoping the summer to kind of like take the videos to the next level. Now that I got this new camera, and try and really do some cool stuff. Hopefully, just because it's fun, man. shit, man. I mean,
Mm.
you got to. The only problem, Jeff, is you got to camp in a tent. Well, actually, you know what? They've got little cabins that you can rent.
Oh,
So
so this is an actual like camping event, huh?
yeah. There's like a big there's a big area. So like I think they've got like these little teepees that you can rent out if you need like a little bit better accommodations. But
Right.
otherwise, you just
For people who are too lazy to camp. Yeah,
yeah. But otherwise, you just bring a tent out there and
that's
just camp
cool.
2 nights and all outdoor festival, and I'm sure it'll be cool. But yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, like I said, just hopefully just start finding some time to get some videos in. It's hard. It's really hard to plan for because it's only like on the weekends, and a lot of times, like I said, I mean, like we're doing other stuff, and it's not to actually find um, time where I don't have anybody I'm going to do anything with, and I could just go out by myself and just kind
For
of do something.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's time consuming. It's and all the stuff that we do on the side, it's priority wise. It always rarely gets to be on top. But yeah, I mean, I look forward to more of your videos, and I definitely recommend everybody checking out Future Ruins if you have not already, which hopefully you already have. So, but yeah, why don't we wrap up here because I'm probably gonna fall asleep soon.
Absolutely, man.
But yeah, I appreciate you doing this with me, and look forward to or wherever whatever other channels we'll be on in the future. Jeff, you'll have to maybe throw some more our way.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find ourselves on another deep dive or two at some time in the near future. But yeah, dude, it was really cool getting to kind of know you, from those, and yeah, I just thank you for the conversation and for the time, man. Thanks for inviting me on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.